You play Charlotte in the new indie thriller Dark Obsession. How was this character originally described to you?
She wasn't really described to me. I read the script and then got on set and we played. I think what was interesting to me was, as you know, as being a woman, there's a lot of stuff that you can look in another woman's eyes and see what's going on
Mhm.
some of the time, whether or not they're expressing it out of their mouth or not. We just don't talk about that stuff. So I think that was what resonated with me was that I mean, I liked that she was doing it all on her own. I liked that Blaine wrote and produced and was starring in and carrying this entire film as a female. Literally, there's hardly anybody in any scenes with her. So I know how difficult that can be. And that George was helping make this, doing this with her. I support indie filmmakers. I think the movie had a great message. And I myself had come from having two children going through fertility struggles and both my babies are IVF. So I know what that, how that secret is and weirdness is and the inability to kind of talk to other people or your husband or friends or, living in this sort of isolated, all alone world that you're not supposed to feel a certain way about, but you just do, is very complicated. And I don't think it had been seen that much. So Charlotte was sort of, like I got it. I was one of the women that I got it. I could look at her and I know exactly what you're going through. It wasn't necessarily the baby stuff, but it was, as we find out in the film, it was the husband and the abuse and all of that stuff, which is you don't necessarily understand when you see that scene until obviously you watch the film and you're like, oh, I get it now.
Mhm.
So I like those little breadcrumbs that they have throughout the movie.
Absolutely. And kind of in addition to the themes and the script that you talked about a little bit, what was it about the film that attracted you to it beyond those things?
The simplicity, the storytelling, the characters' relationship. Again, we were in COVID, so isolation and how everybody was sort of going crazy, yet having a hard time sitting with themselves and doing things that they didn't want to do with their life anymore. It
Mhm.
was a great time for a lot of us that were stuck and didn't realize we were stuck or in a life that we didn't realize we were in until we had to sit with it because we're so used to running, 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 running that I think this was kind of what was happening, but told in a different way. And I thought it was really interesting and simple. A lot of the films and scripts I get are very like, I'm in the opening scene because I'm have the biggest kill in it, or I'm at the very end because I'm the one that's going to be in the sequel. Or so it's nice to just get these little parts that are tiny but that make an impact on the story.
Absolutely. And Charlotte's character contributes heavily to the somber and nervous energy of the film. Did you have to do anything special to get into that dark headspace?
No, unfortunately, it's pretty easy for me to go to that fucked up place. um, you know, it's it's almost more difficult to do roles that are where there's less to do
Mhm.
because you don't ever feel like you're good enough or like you've gotten across what you need to get across. It's worrisome. Where if I do a big scene where I've got an action thing or I'm crying or there's some big emotional thing and you leave going like, okay, good. I gave them what they needed or what they wanted for the film for this. I feel like I did a good job for them. I didn't have that with this. So I really had to rely solely on, my co-star and my director saying, I think this feels really right and I got what we needed. And yes, you don't need to say the words, but I can see it in your eyes. And yeah, I looked like shit and I thought it was perfect.
Talk about working a little bit with director George Henry Horton in what
Yeah.
appears to be one of his first feature-length films, and kind of
Yeah.
how that ties into supporting Blaine in this kind of all creative journey.
I mean, I find it really interesting to be on set with new filmmakers because new filmmakers are different now than new filmmakers. I mean, every 5 years it's different. 10 years ago, a new filmmaker had very different obstacles and things to work with that they do now. So I'm sort of like I've been around for a long time. So I've seen it all. And especially with horror or thriller, or I would say genre specific, most of the filmmakers are fans. So they're doing what they love to do. They're not just trying to make, something that they don't want to live with for a while. I think George, because I did another film with George after this too, it's cool to be a part of somebody's journey where they're trying to find their way,
Mhm.
and help them, and also give them access to, I get a lot of people that will come up at a convention, or email me, I've got the script, but I don't think, I know you'll never read it, or I have this dream of working with you one day when I get my first movie made, I'm going to cast you. And you just never know. There are things that I always say, like, just because you don't have money doesn't mean that I'm not going to want to be part of a project, because I hope that my movie, when I probably don't have enough money to get who I want, will say, yes, I want to be part of that, because I want to watch you grow, and I want to watch you learn, and I want to see you explore, because that's what we do for one another. You support the creative process, right? So I think it was, again, just the two of them, and supporting what they were doing, and watching him learn and her learn, and sort of stepping back and saying, I'm here if you have any questions, or you need any help, or along the way with whatever, I'm accessible in that way. It's like watching your kid, like do something for the first time. It's rewarding, and you want to be part of that.
Absolutely. Dark Obsession is an intense, heady psychological thriller, but there are hints of the supernatural kind of woven throughout. I know you talked about you don't really have to do anything to get into that headspace, but is there anything that you have to do to shake off a long day of filming, or are you, able to easily compartmentalize that?
It depends on the role. It really does. There's definitely there's scripts that I read that are so intense that I'm like, I
Mm.
don't want to take this, because I don't know wherever I'm in my own personal life, I have to decide on whether or not I want my body to go through that stuff. And I don't want it to affect, like, when I was, when I had my kids and I was nursing, and
Mhm.
and they needed me to not have that stress. I didn't want to take on any of those roles that they could feel
Yes.
essentially when I came home. So I took much smaller or easier, or stuff that I could, like, let go. Now I'm getting to the point where my kids are, pre-K and first grade, and they kind of know what mommy does, and that I'm an actor, and they're kind of getting it. And I'm explaining it to them while we're watching stuff. They're recognizing, oh, that guy, we watched Snow Day yesterday, and my son was like, that guy was the bad guy in Home Alone. I was like, yes, he's an actor. So now, like, this is what we do. So if I can if I can now take on those roles, and there are a couple scripts that are just starting to come my way, where I would be the lead, and they would be very heavy lifting. I feel like I'm okay, but even then, I actually would prefer to do that stuff on location. So
Mhm.
I would go away for 5 days, just focus solely on that. Definitely come home and probably have a drink. I don't smoke anymore, so I can't do that. But I would probably come home, take a little, edible, and make myself some soup, and go to bed, and wake up and have the next day. But you need to sort of stay
Mhm.
in that space for those roles. I can't imagine back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But I have to go back and forth if I'm coming home to my children.
Mhm.
So if I get to go on location and just sink my teeth into it, I think I'm there, as long as I can be done on a Friday and come home for the weekend and be mom, and then go back and do it again, and then come back and be done.
Absolutely. Tell us about some of your favorite moments on or off set during filming of Dark Obsession. I know it was probably tough to find moments during COVID, but just
Yeah,
anything.
we didn't get any moments during COVID, that's for sure. Nobody got any moments during COVID, at least not with anybody other than themselves.
Mhm.
So we were pretty isolated, and it was one of the first things that I had done. I think I only done one or two other things at that time. So, you're wearing your mask, and you're in another room, and the door's closed, and you're just like, okay, let me know, when you're ready. And then right before we go, you take your mask off, and which is so stupid, and you speak to one another, and then you put it back on, and you go in the other room. So didn't have much time to connect. Unfortunately, I had more time to connect with George when I did his movie Project Dorothy, which still I'm in a sound booth, so I didn't have that, like, hands on. But when you like working with someone, so
Definitely. I think that atmosphere filming during COVID probably helped add to the overall tone of.
feeling of isolation, yeah, absolutely, for sure.
In addition to playing Charlotte, you are credited as a producer in Dark
Mhm.
Obsession. Why is it so important for you to kind of get that hands-on experience and other side of the camera, I suppose?
There's a lot that we don't see what goes on behind the curtain as actors. And as I mean, my podcast partner Scouts getting ready to direct her first feature, and I've directed a feature before and other short films, and she's like, "Girl, there's so much there's this and there's that," and I'm a producer, and it's like there's a point when you're like, I kind of feel like when you show up as an actor, especially in genre stuff, for us that have been doing it for so long, it's not hard.
Yep.
The roles are hard if you make them hard, but because it's fairly easy for us to go to that place and to get there quick and shake it off, it doesn't feel as rewarding. So to still be part of the filmmaking process and be educated and learn about things that you didn't realize you may like, because we're all creatives, right? So when I did my first directing thing, I didn't realize how much I would love doing the score. And then now, like this movie in particular, actually both this and Project Dorothy have really awesome music moments. It's the score, the songs, like their composer, everything. I mean, that's a character, right? The one person on screen the whole time, most of it. So you really need that to be. So that kind of stuff, I felt like, wow, I get to watch the other side, and also you don't have a say in how the movie comes out when you're not a producer or a director. As an actor, you're just hired and you just sort of do your best and pray that that it looks okay and that it does okay. You have no control. So it's nice to be a part of it and also be supporting filmmakers.
Definitely a more holistic approach to creation.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of hats you have to wear. And I think it's, you'll learn from all of them. And after 40 years of being in the business, there's still stuff. And because technology is changing and, there's so many things, every time I get on a set, there's something new. I'm like, wait, what? You can turn my lav off with your phone? Shut up. Like stuff that, I mean, I started when they're doing film, like there was I could hear the rolls of film in the mag box next to my head when I was doing off camera dialogue. So you don't get that anymore. So it's interesting to see the way where the industry is going.
What is it about Dark Obsession that you think will make it a fan favorite thriller? I feel like we need some more good thrillers out there.
Yeah, I think it's there are parts of the story that I believe you don't see coming. I think there's some surprises. And I think a lot of times we watch these movies and go, oh, I know it's going to happen. I know what happened. And while, yes, there may be some parts that you're like, okay, I see it now. There are definitely some things that I think are a surprise and are interesting. When I first read the script, I was like, why is the sister coming over and not talking about the fact, like, it's been a week and she hasn't called the cops? What the fuck is going on? And then you watch the movie and you're like, oh, okay. So just suspend belief for a second. And then now you're like, okay, now I understand. I get it. It all makes sense. Where a lot of movies don't do that. You're just like, oh yeah, right. Like she would ever come over and not call the cops, and they never explain that stuff. So I think what's cool about this is that they're smart writers. They actually think things through and go, well, that doesn't make sense. We need to put this here and this needs to, because for me as an actor, I do that on set. I'm like, I would never do that. That doesn't make sense to why I would, just because you think it looks cool or sounds cool. If it's not realistic, I don't buy it. I mean, you also know watching this movie, like, spoiler alert, but at some point she's going to be found out and the bodies are going to be dug up. Like, that's just the way the world works. But for now, go off and do your thing.
Exactly. What would you like to say to everyone who is a fan and supporter of your iconic genre work?
Thank you. Without you, I don't know where I would be. Being a child actor growing up, it's like make it or break it. And I could have gone completely the other direction and not been sitting here right now. And I mean that in more ways than just like in an interview. And because of the horror community, I'm able to sustain a career for 40 years. And that's fucking crazy. And I keep getting movie roles because the people keep going and seeing them because I'm in them. So I am forever indebted and happy to be here.